I always, anybody who wants to be a writer, I always tell them, I made my own separate course of how to learn writing, which is like start reading James M. Cain first. and it somehow, he kept introducing me to these books. And I went on my own journey of reading and writing and watching films, and because I had not seen anything, they would sit there and talk about Godfather. I did not know what Godfather was. They would talk about Taxi Driver. I did not know what Taxi Driver was. All I had seen was D.C. Curse movies, and I had seen Italian neorealism at the festival. And then I would talk about that. They knew more about more filmmakers. So I was in this curious journey of consumption. I was just consuming movies day and night, which went on for a long time. That's how it all started.
But what about the actual art of writing a script, where you develop characters, you have, all this business of the 3 acts, all that?
I don't like that whole 3-act structure.
Yeah.
I think writing is a very personal thing, and this is the reason why I was asked to leave from FTI when I was teaching writing there, because I would tell them just throw the theory away, and because writing is not mathematics, and 3-act structure makes it into mathematics. It all becomes very, there's no soul in it, and I want to see the writer's soul in it. And my writing process became like, I just write. So what happens is I start writing and it takes me somewhere, and the characters write themselves. And there's this, I once went for a rehab because I was drinking a lot. And in the rehab, when they were trying to teach us about addiction, that's when I realized this is how I write. And which is about, when they were teaching us about addiction, and they said, you know what, our brain has this, we only use 8 to 9 to 10% of our conscious brain. But addiction comes from our 90% of the other subconscious brain. We don't realize it. That's where it kind of, the habit starts to form. And writing somehow for me was like that. Once you start writing, when you're writing from your conscious brain, and most people what they do is, they keep reading what they've written. And when you read what you've written, you will never be satisfied. You'll always think this is lesser than what it should have been. So the first thing I learned was don't read what you write. Just keep writing. And what happens is if you're writing in a flow, around 15 to 20% way in, your subconscious brain kicks in. And then it starts to flow. Your writing starts surprising you. Suddenly you're like, did I write that? Did I just come up with that line? Because you just surprise yourself, because your characters surprise themselves. And it all comes, and somehow I trust the gut instinct, and I started doing that. And by the time I was on my 3rd script, I started trusting that process. And once I started trusting that process, I tried to figure it out, and I started trying to talk to various writers that I knew or came across and who I admired, especially authors, fiction authors. And I realized a lot of people have the same common process. They just write. They do not sit down and create character sketches. They don't sit down and do plot points. They have one idea or one thread, and the whole writing process is like unraveling a sweater. You start pulling the thread, it all kind of comes in, and then by the end of it, realize it's one long single thread. And that's how writing is. Everybody has their own process. I think everybody needs to find their own process. This was my process. And I started practicing that in my class in FTI with the students. And I would do individual sessions with each one. And it somehow worked. It worked because it was the most productive class in the history of FTI. And each one wrote the script. The most reluctant of them wrote the script. It somehow worked. My last student, I just saw his film yesterday. Pada, come on. I was trying to tell him that please teach me how to make films like that.